Series 1 Part 1, please go to the next slide. Series 1 Part 1. Hello, it's me again, Skelly, and this time I'll be taking you through the disputed document that sets out the 1994 Mineworkers Agreement, the 50-50 sharing of surpluses between the guarantor and retired mineworkers. Here's a screenshot of the original document and the web address should you want to check it out yourself. I might add that by right-clicking on the web page you will see that the menu has a narrator, maybe a distant cousin of mine. https://www.legislation.gov.uk/uxi/19944/2577/schedule/made. Please go to the next slide where I begin reading from the document. Statutory Instruments 1994 number 2577. Coal Industry. The Mineworkers Pension Scheme, Modification, Regulations 1994. Made. The 4th of October, 1994. Laid before Parliament. The 7th of October, 1994. Coming into force. The 31st of October, 1994. The Secretary of State, in exercise of the powers conferred on him by Section 22, 1, of, and Paragraph 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11, and Paragraph 5, 1, and 2, of Schedule 5-2, the Coal Industry Act 1994, 1, and of all other enabling powers, after consulting, in accordance with Paragraph 2, 13, of Schedule 5 to that Act, with the British Coal Corporation and the trustees of the Mineworkers Pension Scheme, hereby makes the following regulations. Citation and commencement. 1. These regulations may be cited as the Mineworkers Pension Scheme, Modification, Regulations 1994 and shall come into force on the 31st of October, 1994. Interpretation. 2. In these regulations, the 1946 Act means the Coal Industry Nationalisation Act 1946, 2. The 1994 Act means the Coal Industry Act 1994. The scheme means the Mineworkers Pension Scheme, which was established under the Coal Industry Nationalisation, Superannuation, Regulations 1950, 3, made under Section 37 of the 1946 Act on 1 January 1952 by a resolution of 25 October 1951 of the National Coal Board, and which was amended by subsequent resolutions of that board, the name of which was changed to the British Coal Corporation by Section 1, 1, of the Coal Industry Act 1987, 4. Continuance in force of the scheme. 3. The scheme, being an existing scheme within the meaning of Schedule 5 to the 1994 Act, shall continue in force notwithstanding the repeal by the 1994 Act of Section 37 of the 1946 Act and of the enactments modifying that section. Modification of the scheme. 4. The scheme shall be modified so as to have effect as set out in the schedule hereto by the omission of the provisions thereof which are crossed out in that schedule and the insertion of the provisions which appear therein in italics. Tim Egger, Minister for Industry and Energy, Department of Trade and Industry. The 4th of October, 1994. Regulation 4. The Schedule F scheme as modified. Mineworkers Pension Scheme. Mineworkers Pension Scheme. 1. The scheme. 1.1. Preliminary. 2.2-4. Contributions. 3.4. Admission of other employers and new members. 4.5-7. Constitution of funds. 5.8-10. Management of pension fund. 6.13. Cost of administration. 7.14-16. Accounts and audit. 8.17-18b. Periodical valuation. 9.19-20. Administration. 10.20-36. Committee of Management. 11.37-38. Review and amendment of the scheme. 1239-40. Miscellaneous. 1341. Interpretation. 2. The rules. 1I. Membership and termination of employment and service. 1 Rule 1. Eligibility. 2 Rule 1A. Ceasing normal contributions. 3 Rule 2. Retirement and termination of employment and service. 2. Contributions. 1 Rule 3. Special contributions. 2 Rule 4. Normal contributions. 3 Rule 5. Additional voluntary contributions. 4 Rule 6. Payment of contributions. 3. Benefits. 1 Rule 7. Qualifying service. 2 Rule 8. Pensionable earnings. 3 Rule 9. Inland revenue limits. 4 Rule 9A. Guaranteed minimum pensions. 5 Rule 9B. Cessation of membership. 6 Rule 10. Normal retirement. 7 Rule 11. Deferred retirement. 8 Rule 12. Incapacity retirement. 9 Rule 13. Incapacity retirement, special cases. 10 Rule 14. Incapacity retirement, industrial disablement. 11 Rule 14. Disablement, colliery accidents and diseases. 12 Rule 14B. Optional early retirement. 13 Rule 14C. Leveling option. 14 Rule 15. Termination of service. 15 Rule 16. Widow's benefit. 16 Rule 19. Widow's benefit, supplementary provisions. 17 Rule 20. Children's benefit. 18 Rule 21. Other death benefits. 19 Rule 23. Re-employed pensioners. 20 Rule 24. Lump sum benefits, special provisions. 21 Rule 25. Extra service credit. 22 Rule 26. Adjustments for changes in index of retail prices. 23 Rule 26. Additional 1990 pensions increase. 24 Rule 26A. Additional 1992 pensions increase. 25 Rule 26 AAA. Additional 1994 pensions increase. 26 Rule 26B. Revaluation of deferred pensions. 27 Rule 26BB. Increases to 5th Schedule. 28 Rule 26C. Increases to 7th Schedule. 29 Rule 27. Preservation of benefit. 4. Transfers. 1 Rule 28. Transfer payments. 2 Rule 28. Transfers to IWS-MPS. 5b. Miscellaneous, administration. 1 Rule 31. General discretion. 2 Rule 32. Extension of time limits. 3 Rule 33. Payment of benefits. 4 Rule 34. Unclaimed benefits. 5 Rule 36. Persons not resident in the United Kingdom. 6 Rule 37. Medical examinations. 7 Rule 38. Evidence by members, claimants and beneficiaries. 8 Rule 39. Benefits not assignable. 9 Rule 40. Incapacity of beneficiary. 10 Rule 41. Payment of benefits on death. 11 Rule 42. Payment of children's benefits. 12 Rule 43. Income tax. 13 Rule 44. Calculation of compound interest. 14 Rule 45. Scheme and rules to be supplied to members. 15 Rule 45. Provision of information to IWS-MPS. 6. Determination of claims and disputes. 1 Rule 46. Determinations by local committees. 2 Rule 47. Appeals. 3 Rule 48. Determination of medical questions. 4 Rule 50. Industrial injuries questions. 3 Schedules. 1 First Schedule. Table of lump sum widow's benefit. 2 Second Schedule. Table of lump sum benefits, Rule 10, 3, B, and 6th Schedule. 3 Third Schedule. Resolutions. 4 Fourth Schedule. 1 Part I, Amounts of certain lump sum benefits. 2 Part 3, Special Dependents. 5 Fifth Schedule. 6 Sixth Schedule. 7 Seventh Schedule. 8 Eighth Schedule. The Transferable Sum. 9 Ninth Schedule. Record of bonus augmentations, crystallized augmentations and guaranteed crystallized augmentations. Mine Workers Pension Scheme. Scheme. Preliminary. 1. The scheme shall be deemed to have been established on the 1st of January, 1952 by the National Coal Board by the resolution numbered 1 in the 3rd schedule to the rules annexed hereto, and shall be deemed to have been governed by the terms of the scheme and rules annexed to the said resolution, the original scheme, as amended from time to time by the resolutions listed in the 3rd schedule. The provisions of the scheme, other than Clause 41 and the rules, as set out in these presents, shall constitute the scheme with effect from the 1994 amendment date. The provisions of the rules, and Clause 41, as set out in these presents, shall apply in respect of all contributing members as at the 1994 amendment date, and the entitlement of persons ceasing to be contributing members prior to the 1994 amendment date shall be determined by those provisions of the rules comprised in the original scheme as amended by those of the resolutions listed in the 3rd schedule as were in force on or subsequently made and put into force so as to be effective on the date each such person ceased to be a contributing member. Contributions. 2.1. Before the closure date, every employer shall pay as standard contributions a sum equal to 9.75% of the earnings paid by him to members employed or deemed to be employed by him in respect of any period during which a member is in contributing service, provided that I. The principal employer shall not be required to pay standard contributions equal to 9.75% of such earnings in respect of such period during the period which commenced on the 26th of March, 1989 and terminates on the 28th of October, 2000, and 2. Every employer other than the principal employer shall not be required to pay standard contributions equal to 9.75% of such earnings in respect of such period during the period which commenced on the 1st of April, 1990 and terminates on the 27th of October, 2001. 2. Before the closure date, the principal employer shall pay as deficiency contributions after the coming into operation of any determination of deficiency contributions made by the actuary under Clause 17, such payments as may become payable by them thereunder or as may be necessary on the advice of the actuary. 3. Before the closure date, every employer other than the principal employer or employers of branch secretaries shall pay as deficiency contributions after the coming into operation of any determination of deficiency contributions made by the actuary under Clause 17 such payments as may become payable by him thereunder or as may be necessary on the advice of the actuary. 4a. The total amount of any standard contributions or deficiency contributions payable by an employer during any period shall be reduced by an amount equal to the difference between the total amount of any contributions equivalent premiums paid by that employer during that period insofar as they relate to periods of service in respect of which a pension would or might otherwise have become payable under Rule 9am, and the total of the amounts recovered by that employer during that period under or by virtue of Section 47 of the Pensions Act. b. The total amount of any standard contributions or deficiency contributions payable by the principal employer shall be reduced by such sum as may from time to time be agreed by the principal employer and the Committee of Management as being fair and reasonable, having regard to the costs of managing and administering the scheme, other than such costs as are referred to in paragraph c. of Clause 7. And the cost to the principal employer of services rendered by the principal employer in connection with or for the purposes of the scheme, or in default of agreement as shall be determined to be fair and reasonable, having regard to such costs or cost by a chartered accountant who shall be agreed by the principal employer and the Committee of Management, or, in default of agreement, nominated by the President for the time being of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. 5a. Before the closure date, every employer, other than the principal employer, shall pay to the principal employer on the last day of every month, or on such other dates as may from time to time be determined by the principal employer, the following amounts in respect of the period since the last preceding payment made under this paragraph. I. The amount of contributions payable under the rules by or in respect of members employed or deemed to be employed by such employer insofar in the case of contributions payable under the rules as they have effect on and after the 6th of April, 1975 as they are calculated on the basis of earnings paid or deemed to be paid by that employer, and 2. The amount of all sums payable by that employer as standard contributions and deficiency contributions. B. Every payment made under subparagraph A of this paragraph shall be accompanied by a statement in writing of how the amount paid is made up, and if it shall subsequently be discovered that the amount so shown and paid was greater or less than the true amount payable, the overpayment or underpayment shall be adjusted by a deduction from or addition to the next succeeding payment required to be made under subparagraph A of this paragraph insofar in the case of an overpayment as it is sufficient for that purpose, and if in such case that payment is not so sufficient, the excess shall be payable in cash by the principal employer on demand. 6. The obligations of an employer under this clause to make contributions to the scheme by reference to the earnings of members of the scheme employed by it shall cease in respect of any member upon that member's transfer date. 3. With effect from the 6th of April, 1975, for the purposes of Clause 2. A member shall be deemed to be employed by any person or persons, including any body of persons incorporated or unincorporated, who is or are an employer in relation to him. B. During any scholarship period in relation to a member, that member shall be deemed to be employed by the principal employer, and the earnings which are deemed to be his earnings under the rules shall be deemed to be paid to him by the principal employer, and C. Such earnings of a member engaged in inspection activities as consist of payments made to him in relation to such inspection activities shall be deemed to be paid to him by the persons, including any body of persons incorporated or unincorporated, who are his employer for the purposes of such inspection activities in the same proportions as the proportions of such payments or of the funds from which such payments are made, which those persons are respectively responsible for making or providing. 3 a.m. With effect from the closure date, all obligations under clauses 2 and 3 regarding the payment of standard contributions and deficiency contributions other than in respect of the additional cost of benefits payable in respect of members made redundant prior to March 1981 shall cease. 4. Before the transfer date each member shall contribute such sums as may from time to time be provided under the rules. The principal employer shall be responsible for the collection of all contributions payable by or in respect of members and for the payment of all such contributions to the scheme. 5 underscore 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 underscore. Admission of other employers and new members. 4. 1. With the consent of, before the guarantee date, the Committee of Management, or, on and after the guarantee date, the Committee of Management and the guarantor, employees of any employer which was not participating in the scheme as at the 16th of July, 1991 and who before the closure date are eligible to become members under the provisions of Rule 1 shall be eligible for membership of the scheme provided that any such employer shall enter into a deed by which it covenants with the Committee of Management to comply with and observe the provisions of the scheme so far as they are applicable to it as an employer, and 2. The participation of any such employer will not prejudice approval of the scheme by the Commissioners of Inland Revenue, and 3. The Committee of Management shall not be entitled to give their consent unless any such employer covenants to pay such contributions as the actuary shall determine to be fair and reasonable, and unless the actuary gives an opinion to the effect that the admission to the scheme of the existing employees, if any, of any such employer on the terms proposed is unlikely within the following 5 years to prejudice significantly the rights or interests of any person already a member at the date of such admission. provided also that subparagraphs I and 3 of the said proviso shall not apply to small mine licensees or subsidiaries of the British Coal Corporation. 2a. New employees of employers, subject to the exceptions mentioned in subparagraph b of this paragraph, shall not be eligible for membership of the scheme without the consent of, before the guarantee date, without the consent of the Committee of Management or, on and after the guarantee date, the Committee of Management and the guarantor, provided that the Committee of Management shall not be entitled to give their consent unless the actuary gives an opinion to the effect that the admission of such new employees to the scheme on the terms proposed is unlikely within the following 5 years to prejudice significantly the rights or interests of any person already a member at the date of such admission. b. The following categories of new employees shall be excluded from the provisions of subparagraph a of this paragraph. I. New employees of the British Coal Corporation and of any employer which at the time of the new employee accepting employment is a subsidiary of the British Coal Corporation. 2. New employees of the principal employer other than the British Coal Corporation who accept employment in the ordinary course of that part of its business which such principal employer shall have acquired from the British Coal Corporation, and 3. New employees of any other employer who accept employment in the ordinary course of that employer's business. 3. After the closure date the powers of admission of employers and new members under this clause 4am shall cease. Constitution of Funds. 5.1. With effect from the 1st of October 1974 the monies of the scheme shall constitute the Menorcas Pension Fund, hereinafter called the Pension Fund. 2. With effect from the 6th of April 1975 the members for the time being of the Committee of Management shall, subject as hereinafter provided, be the trustees of the scheme and of its monies. 5.1. With effect from the guarantee date the guarantor shall have power subject to paragraphs 2 and 3 of this clause exercisable by notice in writing, sent to the person to be appointed, signed on behalf of the guarantor and having effect from the date specified in such notice to appoint a new trustee of the scheme and of the pension fund in place of any trustee who ceases to be a trustee, and the guarantor shall also have power exercisable in like manner to remove a trustee of the scheme and of the pension fund from office. 2. With effect from the guarantee date the guarantor will appoint Mineworkers Pension Scheme Trustees Limited or such other person as shall be appointed by the guarantor under the power mentioned in paragraph 1 of this clause as sole trustee of the scheme and the pension fund. 3. In the event of Mineworkers Pension Scheme Trustees Limited or any other trustee appointed in accordance with paragraph 1 of this clause ceasing after the guarantee date for any reason to be the trustee of the scheme and of the pension fund, the guarantor shall forthwith appoint a new trustee or trustees of the scheme and of the pension fund comprising either I. A new corporate trustee whose articles of association would be in a form corresponding as closely as possible to those of Mineworkers Pension Scheme Trustees Limited at the time it ceases to be a trustee, and would provide for the appointment of a committee of management consisting of 10 persons, of whom 5 would be appointed by and would be subject to removal by the guarantor, and 5 would be appointed by and would be subject to removal in accordance with rules to be agreed between the guarantor and such organizations as represented substantial proportions of the classes of the employees and former employees of the principal employer who are members of the scheme, provided that a. In the event that it is not possible to agree such rules, or there is a dispute as to which organizations represent substantial proportions of the classes of the principal employer's employees who were members of the scheme, the matter shall be referred to a single arbitrator to be named by the President for the time being of the Law Society. The arbitrator so named shall have all the powers conferred on arbitrators by the Arbitration Acts 1950 and 1979. b. With effect from the 1st of October 1995 two of the persons appointed by organizations referred to above, one from each organization, shall, subject to the appointment of replacements, cease to be members of the Committee of Management and shall be replaced by 2 persons elected to represent the members of the scheme in accordance with procedures identical to those set out in the appendix to the Articles of Association of Mine Workers Pension Scheme Trustees Limited. C. With effect from the 1st of April 1996, the remaining 3 persons appointed by the organizations referred to above shall, subject to the appointment of replacements, cease to be members of the Committee of Management and shall be replaced by 3 persons elected to represent the members of the scheme in accordance with the procedures identical to those set out in the appendix to the Articles of Association of Mine Workers Pension Scheme Trustees Limited, or 2. 10 individual trustees, the selection, appointment and removal of whom would be carried out in a manner corresponding to that referred to in I. above in respect of the Committee of Management of a new corporate trustee. 4. With effect from the guarantee date, the guarantor shall appoint the chairman of the Committee of Management, and the chairman so appointed shall have, in the case of an equality of votes, a second or casting vote. Provided that any person appointed as chairman may not be a Crown servant or a member of the scheme and will only be appointed by the guarantor after consultation with the Committee of Management. 5. With effect from the guarantee date. I. All powers expressed by the scheme, in whatever terms, to be vested in, conferred on or exercisable or to be exercised by the Committee of Management shall be vested in the trustee. 2. Such powers and all other powers vested in, conferred on or exercisable or to be exercised by the trustee under or by virtue of the scheme shall be exercised by it and on its behalf by and through the Committee of Management in their capacity as the committee of the trustee within the meaning of the Articles of Association of the trustee, hereinafter called the Articles, or any other person or body of persons required, authorized or empowered to exercise such powers or any of them by or under any provision of the scheme and by or under the Articles, and 3. Save in relation to Clause 39 and the meanings assigned to the Committee of Management by Clause 41, 2. Any reference in the scheme, in whatever terms, to the Committee of Management shall be construed as a reference to the trustee acting by and through the Committee of Management in the capacity specified in subparagraph 2 of this paragraph, or any other person or body of persons required, authorized or empowered to act for it or on its behalf for that purpose by or under any provision of the scheme and by or under the Articles. Provided that, except in so far as is otherwise expressly provided therein, neither the Articles, any amendment to the scheme taking effect from the guarantee date, nor any act or thing done in consequence or pursuance of or in connection with the Articles or any such amendment or deed shall affect the validity, operation or effect of anything done or omitted to be done before the guarantee date by, for or on behalf of the Committee of Management, any subcommittee of such Committee of Management so constituted, or the joint secretaries, within the meaning of the scheme as it had effect from time to time before that date. 6. There shall be paid into or held to the credit of the pension fund. A. All standard contributions and deficiency contributions payable by the principal employer. B. All sums received by the principal employer from other employers in respect of standard contributions and deficiency contributions payable by such employers and in respect of members' contributions. C. All sums collected by the principal employer as members' contributions. D. All sums received by way of transfer value payments or received before the 6th of April 1975 as payments by way of transfer from any other superannuation scheme, and all sums accepted by the scheme on or after the 6th of April 1975 by way of transfer payments from any other occupational pension scheme. F. All dividends, interest and benefits arising out of the investment or employment of the pension fund or any part thereof. G. All other sums received or held by the principal employer or the Committee of Management in connection with or for the purposes of the scheme. 7. There shall be paid out of the pension fund. A. All benefits payable to any person under the rules. B. All costs and expenses of the administration of the scheme incurred before the 1st of October 1975 or on or after the 31st of December 1994. C. All costs and expenses incurred by virtue of the exercise of the powers conferred by paragraph 2. Of Clause 10. D. Any sums payable under the rules as they have effect from time to time by way of transfer value payments, transfer payments or other payments by way of transfer to any other occupational pension scheme or other superannuation scheme. E. All sums payable by law out of the pension fund or by the Committee of Management in their capacity as trustees or administrators of the pension fund or of the scheme, provided that no such payments shall be made out of the investment reserve except pursuant to clauses 18a, 18b or 40. 7 am with effect from the guarantee date all payments of bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations other than guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall be made only from the bonus augmentation fund. Management of pension fund. 8.1. So much of the monies of the scheme as shall not from time to time be required for application in the payment of pensions or other benefits or otherwise shall as soon as practicable be invested by the Committee of Management in or upon the security of such investments whatsoever and wheresoever situate whether or not involving liability or whether or not producing income and whether or not otherwise authorized by law for the investment of trust funds as the Committee of Management shall in their absolute discretion think fit to the intent that the Committee of Management shall have the same unrestricted powers of making, varying, managing and transposing investments as if they were absolutely entitled to such monies beneficially. 2. Without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing powers the Committee shall have power a. To effect and maintain policies of insurance. b. To retain or place any such monies on deposit or current account with any bank or on deposit with any company, local authority, building society or insurance company in any part of the world and for such periods as they shall think fit, and c. To carry out any improvements of any kind to land or buildings in which the scheme has an interest including the erection, demolition and reconstruction of any buildings and the development of land and other property. 3. The Committee of Management shall have power to appoint one or more nominees or custodian trustees to hold investments on behalf of the Committee of Management. 4. The Committee of Management shall have power to raise or borrow any sum or sums of money and to secure the repayment thereof in such manner and upon such terms as they think fit and to charge the sums so raised or borrowed or any part thereof on all or any part of the scheme fund. 5. The Committee of Management shall have power to enter into any transaction which is not authorized by any of the other provisions of the scheme or otherwise by law and which in their opinion is beneficial to the scheme and, without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing, the Committee of Management shall have power a. To lend any investments of the scheme fund to any person or corporation on such terms and for such purposes as the Committee of Management may think fit. b. To underwrite, sub-underwrite or guarantee the subscription of any stocks, shares, debenture stocks or other investments, and c. To give any warranty or indemnity in connection with the exercise of their powers under this clause. 6. Monies may be invested or laid out in or upon any investment or transaction of any nature hereby authorized notwithstanding that the same may be acquired or entered into by the Committee of Management jointly or in common with any other person or corporation. 8.1. Notwithstanding the provisions of Clause 8, no part of the pension fund shall at any time be invested in employer-related investments as defined in paragraph 2 of this clause save that the pension fund may at any time be invested in not more than 3% of any class of any securities issued by an employer or any such company as is referred to in subparagraph a.I. of paragraph 2 of this clause which are listed or permitted to be dealt in on any recognized stock exchange. 2. For the purposes of this clause, a. Employer-related investments means I. Shares or other securities issued by an employer or by any holding company as defined in Section 736 of the Companies Act 1985 of an employer or by any company in which an employer or such holding company holds a majority of the voting rights. 2. Property, other than land, which is used for the purposes of any business carried on by an employer or any such company as is referred to in subparagraph a.I. and 3. Loans to an employer or any such company as is referred to in subparagraph a.I. and b. Securities means any asset, right or interest falling within paragraph 1, 2, 4 or 5 of Schedule 1 to the Financial Services Act 1986. 9.1. The Committee of Management by themselves or any nominee on their behalf shall have power to do all or any of the following. A. To carry on any business or other activity in partnership whether in the United Kingdom or elsewhere. B. To enter into any business or other partnership with others whether in the United Kingdom or elsewhere, or to acquire by subscription or otherwise an interest whether freely transferable or not in any such partnership. C. From time to finance or provide funds whether by way of loan or further investment or otherwise for any partnership or proposed partnership of which they or their nominee may for the time being be partners or propose to become partners, and D. From time to enter into any arrangement or agreement whether by way of substitution for or modification of any then subsisting arrangement or agreement or otherwise with all or any of the other partners or proposed partners in any partnership or proposed partnership of which they or their nominee may for the time being be partners or propose to become partners. 2. The Committee of Management or any nominee on their behalf shall have power without being liable for any loss occasioned thereby to leave the entire management of any business or activity carried on by any partnership of which they or such nominee may for the time being be partners to any other partners or partner without any obligations on their or such nominee's part to attend thereto further than to require such other partners or partner to render an account thereof from time to time as the Committee of Management or such nominee may think appropriate. 3. For the avoidance of doubt the Committee of Management shall have power I. To employ any monies of the scheme not required for payment of pensions or other benefits, and 2. To enter into transactions in connection with such a partnership, as though such a partnership were an investment authorized under paragraph 1 of Clause 8. 4. For the purposes of this clause business includes any trade, profession or occupation. 9 am The Committee of Management shall with effect from the guarantee date exercise and perform their powers and duties under clauses 8 am and 9 in accordance with and subject to any directions as the guarantor may from time to time make, provided that the guarantor will only make such directions after consultation with the Committee of Management unless in exceptional circumstances such consultation is impracticable. 10.1. Without prejudice to the provisions of or to any powers conferred by Section 23 of the Trustee Act 1925 or Clauses 8, 9, 31 and 32, the Committee of Management shall have POWER. Such power to be exercisable with effect from the guarantee date only with the consent of the guarantor, to employ such nominees or agents as the Committee of Management may think fit in the transaction of any business of the scheme, including the payment of pensions and other benefits, and any valid receipt therefore given to or by such nominee or agent shall be a good and sufficient discharge to the Committee of Management. 2. Without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing and the provisions of clauses 31 and 32, the Committee of Management shall have power, such power to be exercisable with effect from the guarantee date only with the consent of the guarantor, to appoint and remove one or more investment managers to the scheme and to authorize any such investment manager to exercise all or any of their powers set out in clauses 8, 9 and paragraph 1. Of this clause on such terms as to remuneration and otherwise as shall from time to time be agreed between the Committee of Management, with effect from the guarantee date with the consent of the guarantor, and such investment manager or managers. Cost of administration. 13.1. The Committee of Management shall at such times and in such manner as may be agreed between the Committee of Management and the principal employer pay to the principal employer such amounts as are certified by a duly authorized officer of the principal employer. A. To have been expended by the principal employer in the payment of benefits under the rules, or B. To be required to meet the costs of the principal employer's participation in the administration of the scheme and of any services rendered by the principal employer to the Committee of Management in connection with or for the purposes of the scheme, insofar as incurred in either case before the 1st of October 1975 or on or after the 31st of December 1994, on such basis as shall be agreed between the principal employer and the Committee of Management as fair and reasonable, or in default of agreement as shall be determined by an accountant who shall be agreed by the principal employer and the Committee of Management, or in default of agreement nominated by the President for the time being of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. 2a. The costs of managing and administering the scheme, other than such costs as are referred to in paragraph c of clause 7, and the cost to the principal employer of services rendered by the principal employer in connection with or for the purposes of the scheme insofar as incurred in either case on or after the 1st of October 1975 and before the 31st of December 1994 shall, subject to the provisions of paragraph 4 of clause 2, be borne by the principal employer. b. The costs referred to in paragraph c of clause 7 insofar as incurred on or after the 1st of October 1975 shall be payable by or with the authority of the Committee of Management out of the Pension Fund. Accounts and Audit. 14.1. The Committee of Management shall cause to be kept full and true accounts of the pension fund and of all sums of money received and payments made by the Committee of Management and by all persons employed by or under the Committee of Management, and shall cause to be kept full and correct records of all matters necessary or proper to be recorded. Separate accounts shall be kept in relation to additional voluntary contributions made by members under Rule 5. The accounts and records of the Committee of Management shall be at all times open to the inspection of the members of the Committee of Management. 2. The Committee of Management shall create and maintain and cause to be incorporated in the accounts of the scheme and the auditor's report thereon, separate accounts showing the workings of each of the investment reserve, the guarantors fund, the bonus augmentation fund, the crystallized augmentation fund and the guaranteed fund, recording in full the accretions to and the payments from and transfers between each of those funds. The terms of all bonus augmentations, crystallized augmentations, if any, and guaranteed crystallized augmentations, if any, shall be recorded and documented separately in the 9th schedule. The terms on which any guaranteed crystallized augmentation cease to be a liability of the guaranteed fund as a consequence of the application of later surpluses in the bonus augmentation fund shall also be recorded in a similar manner. In respect of the benefits payable or secured out of the bonus augmentation fund or otherwise, records shall be kept of all bonus augmentations in respect of each member entitled to bonus augmentations, crystallized augmentations and guaranteed crystallized augmentations, showing the amounts paid or payable. 14. The Committee of Management shall from time to time, with the consent of the principal employer, appoint some person or firm with proper professional qualifications to be the auditors to the scheme upon such terms as to duties and remuneration as the Committee of Management and the principal employer may think proper. No member of the Committee of Management shall be eligible for appointment as the auditors to the scheme. The terms of any appointment of auditors under this clause shall comply with the Occupational Pension Schemes, Auditors, Regulations 1987. 14. The Committee of Management shall, with effect from the guarantee date and from time to time with the consent of the guarantor, appoint some person or firm with proper professional qualifications to be the auditors of the scheme upon such terms as to duties and remuneration as the Committee of Management and the guarantor may think proper. No member of the Committee of Management and none of the directors or executive officers of any corporate trustee of the scheme shall be eligible for appointment as auditors to the scheme. The terms of any appointment of auditors under this clause shall comply with the Occupational Pension Schemes, Auditors, Regulations 1987. 15.1. The Committee of Management shall cause statements of account including balance sheets, to be prepared as hereinafter provided. 2. With effect from the 6th of April 1975, the said statements shall be made up to the 30th of September in each year or to such other date as the Committee of Management may determine. 3. Each such statement shall be completed not later than 6 months after the date to which it is made up, and the auditors shall make a report on such statement which shall be attached to it. 4. the auditors shall have a right of access at all times to the books and accounts of the Committee of Management and all vouchers relating to the items shown therein, and shall be entitled to require from the Committee of Management and their officers such information and explanations as they deem necessary for the performance of their duties. 16. A copy of every annual statement of account and of the auditor's report attached thereto shall be delivered to the principal employer, before the guarantee date, or to the guarantor, on and after the guarantee date, and to each appointing union within 3 months of the date on which they are completed. 16. The Committee of Management shall, promptly supply to the guarantor information regarding the scheme, including without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing copies of reports prepared, received or commissioned by the Committee of Management regarding the management of the scheme and the investment of the assets of the scheme, and 2. Promptly supply such further information as the guarantor may request. Periodical valuation. 17.1. The actuary shall make periodic reviews of the financial condition of the scheme. Each period including or after the 6th of April, 1975, in respect of which such a periodic review is made, shall commence in the case of the first such review after the 5th of April, 1975, on the day immediately following the end of the period in respect of which the last periodic review was made under Clause 17 of the scheme, as it had effect immediately before the 6th of April, 1975, and in the case of each subsequent review on the day immediately following the end of the period in respect of which the last preceding review was made under this clause. B. Shall not in any event exceed 3.5 years. C. Shall be 3 years unless prior to the guarantee date the Committee of Management, or on and after the guarantee date the Committee of Management with the consent of the guarantor determine otherwise in any particular case. 2. On each such periodic review before the guarantee date, the actuary shall make recommendations as to the total of the rates of members' normal and employers' standard contributions to the scheme. 2. The actuary shall determine whether or not, at the review date, there is a surplus or deficiency in the pension fund if contributions after the review date are paid at the rate or rates recommended in subparagraph I of this paragraph. For the purpose of such determination, deficiency Y contributions paid or yet to be paid to meet the additional cost of benefits payable in respect of members made redundant since March 1981 shall be regarded as an asset of the pension fund. 3. If there is such a deficiency, after allowing for the deficiency, contributions paid or yet to be paid specified in subparagraph 2 of this paragraph, the actuary shall determine the total periodic sum, either fixed in money terms or linked to average earnings or prices, in this paragraph called the deficiency sum, which, in his opinion, is required to be paid by way of deficiency contributions to the scheme over a period of such number of accounting years of the principal employer, not exceeding 20, commencing on such date not earlier than the review date, and at such periodic intervals all as shall be determined by the principal employer. B. Having regard to any determination pursuant to subparagraph A of this paragraph, the actuary shall review any previous determination of deficiency contributions then operative made by him, and shall substitute for such previous determination a fresh determination of deficiency contributions, which shall consist of a determination of the amount or proportion of each deficiency sum which shall be payable by way of a deficiency Y contribution by each employer other than the principal employer or employers of branch secretaries, the first of which deficiency contributions shall be payable by each such employer respectively in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 5 of clause 2 within 1 month after the date referred to in subparagraph A of this paragraph, and 2. The amount or proportion of each deficiency sum remaining after the subtraction therefrom of the total of the amounts or proportions thereof referred to in subparagraph B of this paragraph, which remaining amount or proportion shall be payable as a deficiency contribution by the principal employer. C. In making any determination under subparagraph B of this paragraph, the actuary may insofar as he thinks fit have regard to the relationship or likely relationship, at such date as he may on the occasion of each such determination consider appropriate. between the number of members employed by employers other than the principal employer or employers of branch secretaries and the total number of members employed in eligible employment, and or alternatively. 2. Between the amount of weekly earnings paid or deemed to be paid to members by employers other than the principal employer or employers of branch secretaries and the total amount of weekly earnings paid or deemed to be paid to members by all employers. And the provisions of Clause 3 shall apply for the purposes of this subclause as they apply for the purposes of Clause 2. 3. On each periodic review before the guarantee date the actuary shall make a report to the Committee of Management on the financial condition of the scheme, specifying the determination made by him under paragraph 2 of this clause. A copy of each review and report so made shall be delivered by the Committee of Management to the principal employer and to each appointing union, together with any recommendation they may wish to make having regard thereto. 18. With effect from the 6th of April, 1975 and until the guarantee date, if having regard to the results of any review before the guarantee date and the contents of any report thereon made under Clause 17 it appears to them expedient or desirable so to do, the Committee of Management shall review the scheme and shall report to the principal employer and each appointing union the results of their review and such amendments and variations, if any, of the scheme as the Committee of Management may consider expedient or desirable having regard thereto. 18. Following the periodic review of the financial condition of the scheme by the actuary as at the 30th of September, 1993 the balance of the surplus remaining after deducting I. The actuarial value calculated as at the 13th of June, 1994 of the improvements to benefits specified in Rules 25, 2, and 26 AAA, and 2. The actuarial value of relieving employers from the obligation to pay standard contributions under Clause 2, 1, for such period as there are members paying normal contributions to the scheme, shall be available to be used as an investment reserve to be established on a date falling on or after the 15th of September, 1994. 18. Adopt, a. As soon as practicable after the guarantee date the actuary shall make and advise the Committee of Management of the initial determination of the investment reserve which shall be calculated as at the guarantee date and shall be the present value of the total surplus, expressed in terms of market values, as at the 30th of September, 1993 actuarial review less the aggregate of I. The present value of the capital value, expressed in terms of market values, as at the 30th September 1993 actuarial review of the amount applied for the benefit of members, and 2. The present value of the aggregate amounts which would have been contributed to the scheme by the employers since the 30th of September 1993 on the basis of the recommendation of the actuary under Clause 17, 2, a, I. Following the actuarial review of the pension fund as at the 30th of September 1993 up to the guarantee date as standard contributions but for the suspension of that liability by operation of subparagraphs 1, I, and 1, 2, of Clause 2. The Committee of Management on receipt of the advice of the actuary relating to his initial determination of the investment reserve, shall forthwith create such accounts, and make such entries or transfers as are necessary to give proper effect to the establishment of the investment reserve as so determined. b. On each periodic actuarial review following the guarantee date the actuary shall review the determination of the investment reserve and where appropriate shall recommend to the Committee of Management that it makes such adjustments to the investment reserve as he may consider appropriate in order to I. Provide for transfers from the investment reserve to the guaranteed fund pursuant to paragraphs 4, b, I, 4, b, 2, or 5, 4, of Clause 18b. 2. Provide for transfers to the investment reserve from a surplus in the guaranteed fund pursuant to paragraph 4a of Clause 18b. 3. Provide for an adjustment to the payments to the guarantor under c. below so as to achieve the reduction of the investment reserve to a nil amount over a period of 25 years from the guarantee date or such longer period as the guarantor may from time to time determine. 4. provide for the continued application since the later of the guarantee date and the last review date by way of transfers to the guaranteed fund from the investment reserve of amounts for the benefit of the employers by way of contribution reductions pursuant to subparagraphs 1(i) and 1(2) of clause 2, and v. make allowance in any of the calculations, I, 2, 3, or 4, above or generally in the review of the determination of the investment reserve for timing differences, investment returns and future investment returns, and for these purposes shall make such actuarial assumptions regarding future investment returns as are consistent with those employed in the periodic review being carried out, or where such assumptions are required for the initial determination of the investment reserve. The actuary may make such assumptions as to future investment returns as he shall consider appropriate. The Committee of Management, on receipt of the recommendations of the actuary relating to his review of the determination of the investment reserve, shall forthwith make such adjustments and transfers by reference to items I, 2, v, above as are indicated in such recommendations. C. Subject to the provisions of Clause 18b, which apply in the event of a periodic valuation of the guaranteed fund disclosing a deficiency in the guaranteed fund, the Committee of Management shall each year following a periodic actuarial review of the pension fund after the guarantee date pay to or apply for the benefit of the guarantor such part of the investment reserve as the actuary shall at that periodic actuarial review determine to be appropriate in respect of the period until the next review. D. For the purposes of this clause and clause 18b. I. Investment returns, including capital gains or losses realized or unrealized and net of expenses, shall be attributed to the investment reserve, the guarantor's fund or the bonus augmentation fund, as the case may be, every quarter by applying the proportion that the average notional balance in the relevant fund in that quarter bears to the average assets of the pension fund to the total investment return, including capital gains or losses realized or unrealized, earned by the pension fund in that period. 2. Present value of a previously determined value or amount shall mean that value or amount together with investment returns attributable to the period between the date at which the amount or value was originally determined and the date at which the present value falls to be determined. 3. The investment reserve shall be initially determined as provided in subparagraph A, subsequently and periodically adjusted as provided in subparagraph B, and reduced by payments to the guarantor as provided in subparagraph C. The provisions of this clause and clause 18b regarding the investment reserve shall continue to have effect after any time at which it has no assets. 18b.1. On and with effect from the guarantee date there shall be created within that part of the pension fund other than the investment reserve the following notional subfunds: the guarantor's fund, the bonus augmentation fund, the guaranteed fund, and the crystallized augmentation fund, which shall be comprised and be maintained on a notional basis in the manner set out in paragraph 2. Below to reflect the particular credit and debit items referred to in that paragraph. 2. Following each periodic actuarial review after the guarantee date the payments or adjustments referred to in subparagraphs A and B shall be made. A. There shall be credited to the guarantor's fund I. A share of any surplus under paragraph 4a, 2, and 2. Investment returns calculated in accordance with paragraph D, I, of clause 18a. 3. Any payments received by the pension fund from the guarantor following a certification as is referred to in either paragraph 4b, 2, 3, of this clause or clause 40, 4d. There shall be debited from the guarantor's fund I. Payments to the guarantor under paragraph 3i, and 2. Transfers to the guaranteed fund pursuant to paragraph 4b, 2, 4b. There shall be credited to the bonus augmentation fund I. A share of any surplus under paragraph 4a, I, and 2. Investment returns calculated in accordance with paragraph D.I. of clause 18a. There shall be debited from the bonus augmentation fund I. Such amounts as the Committee of Management acting on the advice of the actuary determined to be necessary to provide bonus augmentations, and 2. Transfers to the guaranteed fund pursuant to paragraph 4b. 2. C. The guaranteed fund shall comprise that part of the pension fund other than the guarantor's fund, the bonus augmentation fund and the investment reserve. D. The crystallized augmentation fund shall comprise that part of the guaranteed fund out of which liability for guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall be met. 3. The following provisions apply in relation to the operation of the guarantor's fund and the bonus augmentation fund. I. The Committee of Management shall pay from any share transferred to the guarantor's fund under paragraph 4a. 2, following a periodic review on or after the guarantee date amounts, after deduction of any tax due thereon, to the guarantor as a series of payments over a 10-year period beginning on the date of the review. The actuary shall in respect of each series of 10 annual payments determine the amount of the annual payments with the aim that the balance of the share to be paid shall be so paid uniformly over the 10-year period, and at the first and second periodic reviews following the commencement of the payments the actuary shall review and if necessary adjust the amounts of the annual payments in any series of payments being made to maintain the uniform payment over the 10-year period. Each annual payment shall be made as at the 1st of October in each year. The last annual payment in a 10-year series shall be determined by the actuary at the third periodic review following the commencement of that series of payments as the amount necessary to complete that series of payments. 2. Subject to clause 40, no amounts may be paid, credited, lent or otherwise transferred to the bonus augmentation fund other than amounts credited as investment returns within the meaning of subparagraph D.I. of clause 18 or transfers to the bonus augmentation fund as a share of surplus under paragraph 4a.I. 4. On each periodic review on or after the guarantee date the actuary, using an actuarial method and assumptions selected by him after consultation with the Committee of Management and the guarantor, shall determine the value of the assets and liabilities of the pension fund and in particular shall determine whether or not at the review date there is a surplus or deficiency in the guaranteed fund, and for the purpose of valuing the pension fund the actuary shall have no regard to the assets comprising the investment reserve, and when valuing those parts of the pension fund comprising the bonus augmentation fund and the guarantor's fund he shall deem the liabilities of the bonus augmentation fund and the guarantor's fund to be equal in value to the corresponding assets of the respective funds. A. If such review discloses that there is a surplus in the guaranteed fund and if there shall have been a transfer under paragraphs 4b or 5.4 of this clause from the investment reserve to the guaranteed fund made in any previous review which in the opinion of the actuary has not been fully recredited to the investment reserve, the present value of such uncredited amount, as determined by the actuary, shall be transferred to the investment reserve from the surplus. The actuary shall then review and adjust the investment reserve as provided in clause 18a.b. The balance of the surplus, if any, following such transfer or the whole of the surplus if there shall have been no such transfer shall be divided by the actuary into 2 equal shares on the basis that I. 1 share shall be transferred to the bonus augmentation fund, and if there shall be liabilities in the crystallized augmentation fund in respect of guaranteed crystallized augmentations the share shall be applied by the Committee of Management to secure crystallized augmentations for members in receipt of guaranteed crystallized augmentations in such form and of such amount as, to the extent as the application of funds will permit, reproduces identically the guaranteed crystallized augmentations being received by such members at that time, and thereupon the liability of the crystallized augmentation fund in respect of such guaranteed crystallized augmentations to the extent that they are so reproduced shall be extinguished. The share or the balance of the share, if any, may then be applied by the Committee of Management pursuant to subparagraph D in augmenting subject to inland revenue limits all or any of the pensions in payment or prospectively payable from the scheme, and 2. The other share shall be transferred to the guarantor's fund. b. I. If the review discloses that there is a deficiency in the guaranteed fund, the actuary shall review the investment reserve and adjust it as provided in items 4 and v of clause 18a, b, and if no bonus augmentations are being or have been paid from the bonus augmentation fund, the actuary shall certify such deficiency to the guarantor and the committee of management, and the committee of management shall thereupon transfer an amount from the investment reserve to the guaranteed fund for the purpose of eliminating such deficiency. The actuary shall then complete the review and adjustment of the investment reserve pursuant to clause 18a, b. If the deficiency is not eliminated by such a transfer from the investment reserve, the actuary shall certify the outstanding deficiency to the guarantor and the committee of management. 2. If the review discloses that there is a deficiency in the guaranteed fund and bonus augmentations are being or have been paid from the bonus augmentation fund, the actuary shall certify the deficiency to the guarantor and the committee of management shall review the investment reserve and adjust it as provided in items 4 and v of clause 18a, b, and the actuary shall 3. Determine the amounts which can be transferred from the investment reserve to eliminate such deficiency, and the actuary shall then complete the review and adjustment of the investment reserve pursuant to clause 18a, b. 2. If the amounts referred to at I above which can be transferred from the investment reserve are not sufficient to eliminate the deficiency, determine the amounts which, when aggregated with transfers of equal value from the guarantor's fund, can be transferred to the guaranteed fund from the bonus augmentation fund to eliminate the deficiency. 3. If amounts fall to be transferred to the guaranteed fund from the bonus augmentation fund, certify to the guarantor and the committee of management the balance in the bonus augmentation fund prior to any such transfers, and also certify the balance, if any, in the guarantor's fund after account has been taken of any outstanding liabilities to the guarantor under paragraph 3(I), and the amount, if any, which should be added to such balance in the guarantor's fund so that it equals the bonus augmentation fund, and 4. Determine the amount of any transfers to the guarantor's fund made following an earlier periodic review which are transferable from the guarantor's fund to the guaranteed fund equal to and in parallel with the amounts transferred from the bonus augmentation fund to the guaranteed fund under 2, above. If the review discloses a deficiency in the guaranteed fund giving rise to a transfer from the investment reserve, an amount shall be transferred to the guaranteed fund from the investment reserve for the purpose of eliminating such deficiency. If it appears that such transfer will not be sufficient to eliminate the deficiency without transfers from the bonus augmentation fund and the guarantor's fund to the guaranteed fund, the actuary shall certify such deficiency to the guarantor and the committee of management, and the committee of management shall make transfers to the guaranteed fund from the bonus augmentation fund and the guarantor's fund in accordance with the preceding provisions of this clause, and for the purposes of this clause the assets of the guarantor's fund capable of being transferred to the guaranteed fund shall include the right of the guarantor's fund to receive future installments of any amount payable by the guarantor to that fund consisting of the balance to be added to the guarantor's fund as certified under 3 of this subparagraph, b. 2. c. On each such periodic review on or after the guarantee date, the actuary shall make a report to the committee of management and the guarantor on the financial condition of the pension fund and the guaranteed fund, specifying the determinations made by him under this paragraph. d. If the report on a periodic review on or after the guarantee date discloses a surplus in the guaranteed fund and as a consequence a transfer is made to the bonus augmentation fund, the committee of management may as soon as reasonably practicable make recommendations to the guarantor for the application of the surplus so transferred, and any such recommendations shall be accompanied by a statement from the actuary as to the financial implications of the recommendations. provided the statement from the actuary confirms that in his view the recommendations can be supported from the monies which will be available in the bonus augmentation fund, the Committee of Management shall with the prior consent of the guarantor implement the recommendations subject only to such modifications, if any, as shall be agreed between the Committee of Management and the actuary with the consent of the guarantor. If there is a deficiency in the guaranteed fund following a transfer to it of the investment reserve and the transfers to the guaranteed fund from the bonus augmentation fund and the guarantor's fund under subparagraphs B2, 2, and B2, 4, and there remains a balance in the guarantor's fund, such balance, or so much as is necessary to eliminate such deficiency, shall be transferred to the guaranteed fund with a view to eliminating such deficiency. If the actuary determines in the case of a deficiency in the guaranteed fund that following a transfer to it of the investment reserve under subparagraph B2, and transfers to it from the bonus augmentation fund under subparagraph B2, and the guarantor's fund under subparagraph B2, and, if appropriate, subparagraph E, the deficiency in the guaranteed fund will not be eliminated, he shall forthwith certify the deficiency to the guarantor and the Committee of Management. 5. On each periodic review on or after the guarantee date, other than the first such review, the actuary shall following his review of the guaranteed fund carry out a review of the bonus augmentation fund, having taken account of the transfers, if any, between the bonus augmentation fund and the guaranteed fund to be made in accordance with subparagraphs A or B of paragraph 4, and the liabilities of the bonus augmentation fund created following the application of the share transferred to it under subparagraph A, I, of paragraph 4, and shall make a report to the Committee of Management and the guarantor on the financial condition of the bonus augmentation fund. In carrying out such a review, the actuary shall determine whether or not at the review date there is a surplus or deficiency in the bonus augmentation fund. If there is a surplus in the bonus augmentation fund and if there shall be liabilities in the crystallized augmentation fund in respect of guaranteed crystallized augmentations, the surplus shall be applied by the Committee of Management to secure crystallized augmentations in the bonus augmentation fund for members in receipt of guaranteed crystallized augmentations in such form and of such amount, to the extent the application of funds will permit, as reproduces identically the guaranteed crystallized augmentations being received by such members at that time, and thereupon the liability of the crystallized augmentation fund in respect of such guaranteed crystallized augmentations to the extent they are so reproduced shall be extinguished. The Committee of Management may as soon as reasonably practicable make recommendations to the guarantor for the application of the balance, if any, of the surplus, and any such recommendations shall be accompanied by a statement from the actuary as to the financial implications of the recommendations. Provided the statement from the actuary confirms that in his view the recommendations can be supported from the surplus in the bonus augmentation fund, the Committee of Management shall with the prior consent of the guarantor implement the recommendations subject only to such modifications, if any, as shall be agreed between the Committee of Management and the actuary with the consent of the guarantor. 2. If there is a deficiency in the bonus augmentation fund, the actuary shall certify the deficiency to the guarantor and the Committee of Management and shall then recalculate the liabilities of the bonus augmentation fund on the basis that all bonus augmentations payable therefrom on terms which provide for the amount of the bonus augmentations in respect of a benefit in payment, to increase at any time or from time to time, shall cease to apply, and the liabilities in respect of bonus augmentations shall be recalculated on the basis of the amounts being paid at the date of the periodic review of the bonus augmentation fund not being increased and being subject to the provisions of V. below, and such recalculated liabilities shall be referred to as crystallized augmentations. 3. If following the identification of the deficiency in the bonus augmentation fund, the bonus augmentation fund is valued again as provided in 2. above with the liabilities recalculated as crystallized augmentations, and the revaluation discloses that the value of the bonus augmentation fund is greater than the value of the crystallized augmentations, the actuary shall certify as the bonus augmentation residue the amount which is in excess of the amount needed to secure the crystallized augmentations, and the Committee of Management may, as soon as reasonably practicable, make recommendations to the guarantor for the application of the bonus augmentation residue, and any such recommendations shall be accompanied by a statement from the actuary as to the financial implications of the recommendations. Provided the statement from the actuary confirms that in his view the recommendations can be supported from the bonus augmentation residue, the Committee of Management shall, with the prior consent of the guarantor, implement the recommendations, subject only to such modifications, if any, as shall be agreed between the Committee of Management and the actuary with the consent of the guarantor. The crystallized augmentations shall remain a liability of the bonus augmentation fund. 4. If the actuary shall certify that the assets of the bonus augmentation fund are insufficient to secure the payment in full of the crystallized augmentations which remain a liability of the bonus augmentation fund, liabilities in respect of that part of the crystallized augmentations which is not covered by assets in the bonus augmentation fund shall be transferred to the crystallized augmentation fund, where those liabilities shall be referred to as guaranteed crystallized augmentations, together with such amount from the investment reserve as is necessary to secure the payment of such guaranteed crystallized augmentations from the crystallized augmentation fund, and if the amount so transferred to the crystallized augmentation fund from the investment reserve is insufficient to secure the payment of the guaranteed crystallized augmentations, such additional amounts as are necessary to so secure the payment of the guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall be transferred from the guarantor's fund to the crystallized augmentation fund. If the total amount which can be transferred from the guarantor's fund is insufficient to secure the payment of the guaranteed crystallized augmentations, the actuary shall certify such deficiency to the guarantor and the Committee of Management. Guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall remain a liability of the crystallized augmentation fund until such time as the liability might be extinguished pursuant to paragraphs 4a, I, or 5i, or pursuant to v. below. v. No provisions in Rule 26 relating to the periodic increase to benefits shall apply to guaranteed crystallized augmentations payable from the crystallized augmentation fund or crystallized augmentations payable from the bonus augmentation fund, but the amounts of guaranteed crystallized augmentations and crystallized augmentations shall be reduced in each year by amounts equal to the relevant proportion of the amount of any increase to benefits payable from the guaranteed fund by operation of Rule 26, so that eventually the payment of those guaranteed crystallized augmentations and crystallized augmentations which represent former increases to benefits, shall cease. For the purposes of this clause, the relevant proportion in relation to either the crystallized augmentations or the guaranteed crystallized augmentations of a member shall be determined by comparing the amounts of whichever is appropriate of the guaranteed crystallized augmentations or the crystallized augmentations of the member with the aggregate of the amounts of the crystallized augmentations and the guaranteed crystallized augmentations of the member. 6. For the purposes of any such review of the bonus augmentation fund, liabilities in respect of bonus augmentations shall be valued using an actuarial method and assumptions selected by the actuary after consultation with the guarantor and the Committee of Management, which are consistent with those used for the review of the guaranteed fund. 7. Any adjustments to the relationship between the assets and liabilities of the guaranteed fund which arise in the course of the review of the bonus augmentation fund shall be carried forward to the next periodic review. 6. The actuary shall produce and make available to the guarantor and the Committee of Management from time to time such certificates as to matters ascertained or determined by him for the purposes of this clause and clause 40, including confirmation that any transfers required under this clause or clause 40 have been made, as the guarantor or the Committee of Management may require in connection with the implementation of any arrangements entered into by the trustee and the guarantor pursuant to clause 39a. Administration. 19. All benefits payable under the rules shall before the guarantee date shall, subject to any deductions to be made therefrom in accordance with the rules, be paid by the principal employer on behalf of the Committee of Management out of monies to be provided by the scheme. After the guarantee date, such benefits shall, subject to any deductions to be made therefrom in accordance with the rules, be paid by or on behalf of the Committee of Management in a manner approved by the guarantor, and in particular all payments of bonus augmentations, crystallized augmentations and guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall be separately identified, and the terms on which they are payable shall be clearly communicated to the recipient. 20.1. Save in respect of the collection of contributions before the closure date and the payment of benefits before the guarantee date, the administration whereof is vested in the principal employer. The management and administration of the scheme shall be vested in the Committee of Management constituted as hereinafter provided. 2. The costs of such management and administration by the principal employer and the Committee of Management insofar as incurred before the 1st of October 1975 or on or after 31st December 1994, and all costs and expenses incurred by virtue of the exercise of the powers conferred by paragraph 2 of clause 10 shall be borne by the scheme. 3. Subject to the provisions of subparagraph b or paragraph 2 of clause 13, the costs of such management and administration by the principal employer and the Committee of Management insofar as incurred on or after the 1st of October 1975 and before the 31st of December 1994 shall be borne by the principal employer. Committee of Management. 20. With effect from the guarantee date, the provisions of clauses 21 to 36 inclusive shall cease to have effect. 21.1. All members and alternate members of the Committee of Management appointed prior to the 28th of August 1987 shall cease to be members or alternate members on and from that date. On and from that date the Committee of Management shall, subject to the exercise of the powers conferred by this clause and to the proviso to paragraph 4 of this clause, consist of 10 members. The principal employer shall have the power to appoint and remove 5 members, and the eligible unions shall have the power to appoint and remove an aggregate number of 5 members. The principal employer and the eligible unions may, in respect of each person appointed by them, appoint and remove a person to be an alternate member of the Committee of Management, and such alternate member shall in the absence of such member be entitled to attend and vote at all meetings of the Committee of Management on behalf of the member in respect of whom he is appointed, and generally in the absence of such member to perform and exercise all the duties, powers and discretions of such absent member. An alternate member shall cease to be an alternate member if the member for whom he acts as an alternate ceases for any reason to be a member of the Committee of Management. 2. Until the first appointment date, the National Union of Mine Workers shall have the power to appoint and remove 4 members of the Committee of Management, and the Union of Democratic Mine Workers shall have the power to appoint and remove 1 member of the committee. Any member so appointed by an eligible union shall continue to hold office until the first appointment date, unless prior to that date he ceases to be a member of the Committee of Management pursuant to the provisions of the scheme. 3. With effect on and from the first appointment date, each eligible union shall have the power to appoint and remove the number of members determined in accordance with paragraph 4 of this clause, subject to the aggregate number of members appointed by the eligible unions not exceeding 5. On and from the first appointment date, each member of the Committee of Management, whether appointed by the principal employer or an eligible union, shall cease to hold office on the next appointment date unless he is reappointed or prior to that date he ceases to be a member pursuant to the provisions of the scheme. 4. The number of members of the Committee of Management to be appointed by each eligible union shall be determined according to the percentage which the number of relevant members of that eligible union at the relevant time bears to the aggregate number of relevant members of both eligible unions at the relevant time, as follows. Percentage of aggregate number of relevant members. Number of members of the Committee of Management. 10% or more but less than 30%. 1. 30% or more but not more than 50%. 2. More than 50% but not more than 70%. 3. More than 70% but not more than 90%. 4. More than 90%. 5. provided that if it is determined that both eligible unions have exactly 50% of the aggregate number of relevant members, the number of members of the Committee of Management shall with effect on and from the next appointment date be reduced to 8, and the references in paragraph 1 of this clause to 10 and 5 shall be deemed to be references to 8 and 4 respectively, until a different percentage shall be determined in accordance with the following provisions of this clause. 5. The principal employer shall not later than the 31st of December 1987 and thereafter, subject to the provisions of paragraph 12 of this clause, at 3 yearly intervals not later than 31st December in the relevant year, notify each eligible union of the number of employees of the principal employer and subsidiaries who were members of the scheme and attributed as being contributing members of that eligible union at the relevant time in the principal employer's records. The principal employer shall also include in such notification the aggregate number of persons so attributed in respect of both eligible unions and the number of members of the Committee of Management which that eligible union has power to appoint pursuant to paragraph 4 of this clause. Such notification shall include confirmation of the verification by the auditors of the particulars contained therein. 6. Within 10 days of receipt of a notification pursuant to paragraph 5 of this clause, an eligible union may give notice in writing to the principal employer that it intends to make submissions to the auditors pursuant to this paragraph. Upon receipt of such notice, the principal employer shall forthwith notify in writing the other eligible union, which may within 10 days thereafter also give notice in writing to the principal employer that it intends to make submissions to the auditors pursuant to this paragraph. An eligible union which has given such notice may not later than the 31st of January next following the notification by the principal employer pursuant to paragraph 5 of this clause submit to the auditors the number of those persons who the eligible union considers were relevant members of the eligible union at the relevant time, together with the full name and such identifying details of each such person and such evidence of contributing union membership as the auditors may from time to time consider necessary. 7. If an eligible union makes submissions to the auditors pursuant to paragraph 6 of this clause, it shall forthwith notify the principal employer in writing. The principal employer shall provide to the auditors such further information from the principal employer's records as the auditors may reasonably require. 8. In respect of employees of the principal employer or subsidiaries, the auditors shall determine by reference to the principal employer's records the number of persons included by an eligible union in any submissions pursuant to paragraph 6 of this clause who were relevant members of the relevant time, provided that where any person included in the eligible union's submissions was not attributed as a contributing member of that eligible union in the principal employer's records at the relevant time, the auditors shall satisfy themselves that the principal employer's records at the relevant time correctly record the union membership, if any, of such person in accordance with his latest instructions to his employer, or failing that, b. satisfy themselves that such person was a contributing member of the eligible union at the relevant time, or, failing that, c. endeavor to obtain from such person his written confirmation as to the eligible union, if any, of which he intended his employer to treat him as being a contributing member at the relevant time, and until they receive such confirmation shall not count that person as a member of the eligible union in question. 9. In respect of persons not employed by the principal employer or subsidiaries, the auditors shall take such steps as they deem appropriate to determine the number of persons included in any submissions by an eligible union pursuant to paragraph 6 of this clause who were relevant members at the relevant time. 10. If at any stage the auditors are satisfied following any submissions by either or both of the eligible unions pursuant to paragraph 6 of this clause that the number of members of the Committee of Management which either eligible union has the power to appoint in accordance with the notification by the principal employer under paragraph 5 of this clause will not require change, then such notification by the principal employer shall stand, and the auditors shall give notice to the principal employer and the eligible unions accordingly. But if the auditors become satisfied that the notification by the principal employer contains a discrepancy which materially affects the number of members of the committee of management which the eligible union has the right to appoint, the auditors shall, prior to the 1st of March next following the notification by the principal employer, make recommendations to the principal employer as to the necessary revisions to such notification, and the principal employer shall implement those recommendations by giving forthwith a revised notification to each eligible union accordingly. 11. Following receipt of a notification or revised notification from the principal employer pursuant to the provisions of this clause, each eligible union shall have power to appoint with effect from the next appointment date such number of members of the committee of management as shall have been notified to it. 12. In any year when a notification would not normally be given by the principal employer pursuant to paragraph 5 of this clause, an eligible union may give notice to the principal employer by not later than the 30th of September in that year. It requires the principal employer to give a notification pursuant to paragraph 5 of this clause in that year. In that event, the principal employer shall by not later than the 31st of December in that year give notification to each eligible union pursuant to paragraph 5 of this clause, and the provisions of paragraphs 5 to 11 of this clause shall apply. 13. The costs of the auditors in connection with this clause, including costs incurred by the principal employer on behalf of the auditors, shall be borne by the pension fund, save that if an eligible union makes submissions or gives notice pursuant to paragraph 6 or 12 of this clause which do not result in an increase in the number of members of the committee of management which that eligible union has power to appoint at the next appointment date. The costs of the auditors in connection with and arising from such submissions or notice, including costs incurred as aforesaid, shall be borne by such eligible union, or, if more than one eligible union, by them in such proportions as the auditors shall determine as appropriate. 22. The appointment and removal of any member of the committee of management and of any alternate member thereof shall be effected by an instrument in writing signed on behalf of the principal employer or an appointing union as the case may be, and delivered to the secretary. Whenever a vacancy occurs on the committee of management, it shall be filled by a new appointment by the principal employer or an appointing union as the case may be. 23. Subject to the provisions of paragraphs 1, 2, 3 of clause 21, any appointment of a member or alternate member of the committee of management may be expressed to be for a specified term or until the happening of some specified event, and upon the expiration of such term or the happening of such event the member or alternate member so appointed shall cease to be a member or alternate member of the committee of management. 24. The office of a member or alternate member of the committee of management shall determine if he shall by instrument in writing delivered to the secretary resign his office, or if he shall become bankrupt or of unsound mind. 25. The principal employer shall appoint the chairman of the committee of management from amongst the members of the committee appointed by them, and may prescribe the period for which he is to hold the office of chairman. 26. The principal employer and the appointed unions acting jointly shall each appoint from amongst the members of the committee appointed by them respectively a person to be a joint deputy chairman of the committee of management, and may prescribe the period for which he is to hold the office of joint deputy chairman. 27. The committee of management may, subject to the provisions of the scheme, meet together for the dispatch of business, adjourn and otherwise regulate their proceedings as they think fit. The chairman of the committee, or in his absence one of the joint deputy chairmen, to be chosen if both are present by agreement between them or in default of such agreement by lot, shall take the chair at every meeting of the committee at which he is present. The continuing members of the committee may act notwithstanding any vacancy in their body, provided that the necessary quorum is available to enable them to act. The quorum necessary for the transaction of the business of the committee of management shall be 1/2 of the total number of members thereof, of whom one must be the chairman or the joint deputy chairman appointed by the principal employer. 28. Subject to the provisions of subparagraph A of paragraph 2 of clause 37, differences arising at any meeting of the committee of management shall be determined by a majority of votes. In the case of an equality of votes, the chairman of the meeting shall not have a second or casting vote. 29. The Committee of Management shall cause proper minutes to be made of all meetings of the Committee of Management and of all business transacted at such meetings. Any such minute of any such meeting, if purporting to be signed by the chairman of such meeting or by the chairman of the next succeeding meeting, shall be conclusive evidence without any further proof of the fact stated therein. 29. A resolution in writing signed by such members of the Committee of Management as would constitute a quorum as specified in Clause 27 for a meeting of the Committee of Management shall be as valid and effectual as if it had been passed at a meeting of the Committee of Management duly convened and held. Such resolution in writing may consist of 2 or more documents in the like terms, each signed by 1 or more of the said members of the Committee of Management. 30. There shall be joint secretaries to act as secretaries of both the Committee of Management and the Rules Amendment Committee. The principal employer and each appointing union shall have the power to appoint and remove one such joint secretary. If an eligible union ceases to be an appointing union, the joint secretary appointed by it shall immediately cease to hold office. If there shall for the time being be a vacancy in the office of the joint secretaries, the surviving or continuing joint secretary or joint secretaries shall have full power to act, and the Committee of Management may at any time and from time to time nominate any person to perform any of the duties of the joint secretaries of the Committee of Management and the Rules Amendment Committee in any case in which it is impracticable or inconvenient for the joint secretaries or the surviving or continuing joint secretary or joint secretaries to act. The Committee of Management may from time to time, with the approval of the principal employer, appoint such other officers and servants as may be requisite for their administration of the scheme at such remuneration and upon such conditions as the Committee of Management, with the concurrence of the principal employer, shall deem proper. The remuneration of the joint secretaries shall also be such as the Committee of Management shall from time to time determine. 31. The Committee of Management shall have power to appoint and to delegate all or any of their powers, other than the power to make regulations, to subcommittees consisting of 1 or more persons being members or alternate members of their own body or of a local committee, or officers or servants of the Committee of Management, or other persons as the Committee of Management shall think fit, and may make any regulations for the conduct of the proceedings of such subcommittees. The meeting and proceedings of every such subcommittee consisting of 2 or more persons shall be regulated by the provisions of the scheme relating to the meetings and proceedings of the Committee of Management, insofar as the same may be applicable and are not superseded by any regulations made under this clause by the Committee of Management. 32. The Committee of Management may delegate all or any of their powers and discretions to the local committees constituted as hereinafter provided, or to any 1 or more of them. 33. The Committee of Management shall establish such local committees as they shall consider requisite to exercise functions in relation to such members or persons entitled to benefit, as they shall specify, to consist of such persons as the Committee of Management shall determine or approve, so however that each local committee shall be so composed that 1/2 of the members thereof are representatives of the principal employer or of small mine licensees, and the other half thereof are representatives of one or both of the eligible unions. The chairman of each local committee shall be a representative of the principal employer. Each local committee shall, subject to the approval of the Committee of Management, make regulations for the conduct of their own proceedings, and in default of and subject to any such regulations, their proceedings shall with the necessary modifications be governed by the provisions of the scheme relating to proceedings of the Committee of Management. 34.1. The Committee of Management may make and from time to time revoke or vary regulations covering the procedure of the local committees and of the Committee of Management in the conduct of references to them respectively, and of appeals from the local committees to the Committee of Management under the provisions contained in the rules in that behalf, and as to the evidence on which they may act in determining questions and disputes submitted to them. 2. The Committee of Management may, at their discretion, or at the request of any local committee, appoint 1 or more representatives to be present at any meeting of that committee. Such representative or representatives of the Committee of Management shall not be entitled to vote at the meeting of the local committee, but shall be entitled to take part in the discussion and to require the local committee to refer any matter under discussion to the Committee of Management for a decision. 3. Each local committee shall have power whenever they think fit to refer any matter to the Committee of Management for a final decision. 35. The Committee of Management may make and from time to time revoke or vary regulations for the general administration of the scheme by the Committee of Management not being inconsistent with the provisions of the scheme or of the rules. 36. Each local committee shall have the power to make and from time to time revoke or vary regulations for the local administration of the scheme not being inconsistent with the provisions of the scheme or of the rules or of any regulations made by the Committee of Management under the last preceding clause and for the time being in force. 36. Each local committee shall be dissolved as soon as practicable after and with effect from the guarantee date, and from that date all references in the scheme to local committees shall be disregarded. 36b. The Committee of Management may delegate any of the powers referred to in Clause 5(i) to any subcommittee consisting, subject to the provisions of Clause 36d and the articles, of such member or members of its body, with or without other persons not being members of its body, as it shall think fit. 2. Any subcommittee so appointed shall in the exercise of the powers so delegated conform to any regulations that may be imposed on it by the Committee of Management. The meetings and proceedings of any subcommittee consisting of 2 or more members shall, subject to the provisions of the articles, be governed by such of those provisions as relate to the meetings and proceedings of the Committee of Management so far as the same may be applicable and are not superseded by any regulation made for such subcommittee under this clause. 36c. On and after the guarantee date the Committee of Management shall from time to time with the consent of the guarantor appoint a secretary and such other persons as may be requisite to administer the scheme, and may at any time remove any person or persons appointed under this clause. The remuneration of the secretary and any other persons so appointed to perform services in connection with the scheme shall be agreed by the guarantor and the Committee of Management and be paid and borne in the same manner as the costs referred to in whichever is applicable of Clause 13(2)(a), and Clause 7(b). 36d. The secretary appointed under Clause 36c shall keep the records of the membership of the scheme together with books and papers relating to the scheme and the business thereof. 2. Report to the Committee of Management, in such manner as the Committee of Management may from time to time direct, on the costs of managing and administering the scheme, applications for allowances or payments under the scheme, and other matters to be brought under the consideration of the Committee of Management. 3. Be a member, in so far as the Committee of Management so agree, of any subcommittee to which powers are delegated under Clause 36b, but shall not be entitled to vote at meetings of such subcommittees, and 4. Perform such other duties in connection with the scheme as the Committee of Management may from time to time direct. 36e.1. Without prejudice to the provisions of or to any powers conferred by Section 23 of the Trustee Act 1925 or Clauses 5am, 8, 9, 10 and 36b, the Committee of Management may delegate to any or more persons or bodies of persons, each of whom or which is in this clause called the delegate, in any part of the world, whether nominated directly by the Committee of Management or nominated by any other person or body of persons authorized by them to do so, and including, for the avoidance of doubt, any nominee or custodian or other trustee appointed under Clause 8, any person or body of persons with whom or which any agreement is or has been entered into under Clause 10 or any subcommittee appointed under Clause 36b, the exercise of all or any of the powers referred to in Clause 5(2), for such period and on and subject to such terms, limitations and conditions, if any, as the Committee of Management may think fit. 2. The terms and conditions referred to in paragraph 1 of this clause may, without prejudice to the generality of that paragraph and if and insofar as the Committee of Management may think fit, include terms and conditions authorizing the delegate, or any other person or body of persons, whether or not a direct subdelegate of the delegate but in this clause called a subdelegate, to whom a subdelegation or further delegation has been made by virtue of any such authorization, to exercise in relation to the powers delegated to him or it the same or any of the same powers as are conferred on the Committee of Management by this clause, and b. providing in such manner as the Committee of Management may think fit for the protection and convenience of persons or bodies of persons dealing with the delegate or a subdelegate. 3. The Committee of Management may at any time cancel or vary any delegation made under paragraph 1 of this clause or any such subdelegation or further delegation as is referred to in paragraph 2a. But no person or body of persons dealing with the delegate or a subdelegate in good faith and without notice of the cancellation or variation shall be affected thereby. Review and amendment of the scheme. 37.1. Subject to the provisions of paragraph 2 of this clause, the principal employer, before the guarantee date, or the guarantor after prior consultation with the Committee of Management on and after the guarantee date may from time to time and at any time, and in particular, but without prejudice to the generality hereof, if any report of the actuary shall have disclosed a surplus or a deficiency in the scheme, amend the scheme or the rules by the alteration, deletion or addition of any provisions, but no alteration, deletion or addition shall be made which would have the effect of a. Altering the main purpose of the scheme from that of providing pensions for members on retirement. b. Making any of the monies of the scheme payable to the principal employer or to any other employer. c. Reducing the amounts of any benefits already earned or accrued apart from bonus augmentations other than guaranteed crystallized augmentations. d. Reopening the scheme on or after the closure date, and e. Amending clause 5a. 3. The proviso to clause 5a, 4, clause 39a, 2, and the proviso to clause 40, 3. 2. No amendment shall be made to the scheme or rules unless, in the case only of an amendment proposed before the guarantee date, such amendment shall have been proposed by the principal employer and approved. a. In the case of an amendment to clause 21, this clause or clause 38 by a resolution of the Rules Amendment Committee passed unanimously at a meeting of that committee attended by all its members or their alternates, and b. In any other case, by resolution passed by the votes of a majority of the members for the time being of the Rules Amendment Committee or their alternates. 3. Amendments to be made by the guarantor under this clause shall be effected by notice in writing addressed to the Committee of Management and signed on behalf of the guarantor, and such amendments shall have effect from the date specified in such notice. 4. After the guarantee date the powers of alteration, deletion and addition granted under paragraph 1 of this clause shall not be exercised, whether in relation to clause 18b, clause 40 or otherwise, in such a way as to render ineffective, in whole or in part, such arrangements as have been entered into by the Committee of Management and the guarantor pursuant to clause 39 and are for the time being in force. 38.1. Subject to paragraph 8 of this clause, a Rules Amendment Committee shall be established to consider proposed amendments to the scheme or rules and shall, subject to the exercise of the powers conferred by this clause, consist of the same number of members as the Committee of Management or such lesser number as may be agreed in accordance with paragraph 4 of this clause. The principal employer shall have the power to appoint and remove one half of the members, and the appointing unions shall have the power to appoint and remove one half of the members. 2. The principal employer and each appointing union may, in respect of each person appointed by them, appoint and remove a person as an alternate member of the Rules Amendment Committee, and such alternate member shall in the absence of such member be entitled to attend and vote at all meetings of the Rules Amendment Committee on behalf of the member in respect of whom he is appointed, and generally in the absence of such member to perform and exercise all the duties, powers and discretions of such absent member. 3. Subject to paragraph 4 of this clause, until the first appointment date the National Union of Mine Workers shall have the power to appoint and remove 4 members of the Rules Amendment Committee, and the Union of Democratic Mine Workers shall have the power to appoint and remove 1 member of the committee. On and from the first appointment date and until the guarantee date, each appointing union shall have the power to appoint and remove one member or, if more than one, a number of members equal to the number of members of the Committee of Management which the appointing union for the time being has power to appoint. 4. Until the guarantee date, the principal employer and the appointing unions may agree that the Rules Amendment Committee shall consist of a number of members which is less than the number of members of the Committee of Management, the number of members accordingly to be appointed by the principal employer and each appointing union being that agreed by the principal employer and the appointing unions. 5. The quorum necessary for the transaction of the business of the Rules Amendment Committee shall be that number which is one more than half of the number of members of that committee, of whom one must be the chairman or the joint deputy chairman appointed by the principal employer. 6. A resolution in writing, not being a resolution to amend Clause 21, Clause 37 or this clause, which has been signed by a majority of the members of the Rules Amendment Committee shall be as valid and effectual as if it had been passed at a meeting of the Rules Amendment Committee duly convened and held. Such resolution in writing may consist of 2 or more documents in the like terms each signed by one or more of the said members of the Rules Amendment Committee. 7. Subject to the foregoing provisions of this clause, the following provisions of the scheme, which concern the procedure for the appointment and continuance in office of members and the regulation of meetings and proceedings, shall apply to the Rules Amendment Committee as they apply to the Committee of Management, namely, Clauses 22, 23, 24, 25 and 26, Clause 27 except for the last sentence and Clauses 28 and 29. 8. The Rules Amendment Committee shall be dissolved with effect from the guarantee date, and from that date all references in the scheme to the Rules Amendment Committee shall be disregarded. Miscellaneous. 39.1. Save to the extent that they are covered by external insurance, the persons protected by this clause are: a. The trustee, the members and alternate members of the Committee of Management, of the Rules Amendment Committee, of every local committee and of every subcommittee of the Committee of Management. b. Each of the joint secretaries and the pensions officer, and with effect from the guarantee date the secretary. c. Until the closure date only, but without prejudice to liabilities incurred prior to that date, the principal employer, CIN Management Limited and its wholly owned subsidiaries, and any officer or employee of any of them, and d. Any other person to whom the Committee of Management, and with effect from the guarantee date the Committee of Management with the consent of the guarantor shall have determined under paragraph 4 of this clause that this clause shall apply, but subject to the terms of any determination so made. References to members and alternate members of committees, office holders, officers, employees and other persons in A, B, C, and D above shall for the purposes of this clause include individuals who were formerly members, alternate members, office holders, officers, employees and other persons as the case may be. 2. Unless and to the extent that he is otherwise covered by external insurance, every person protected by this clause shall together with his estate and effects be indemnified and kept at all times indemnified out of the monies of the scheme against all actions, proceedings, claims, demands, costs, charges, losses, damages, expenses and liabilities of any nature whatsoever and however arising which he or his estate or effects shall or may incur or sustain by reason of any act done or omitted in relation to the affairs of the scheme, except as a result of a willful or reckless act or omission by that person known by him to be a breach of trust or breach of duty in relation to the scheme, or done or omitted by him recklessly as to whether or not it is such a breach of trust or duty. 3. No person protected by this clause shall be accountable or answerable for the acts, receipts, neglects or defaults of any other person acting in relation to the scheme, or by joining in any receipt for the sake of conformity, or for the acts, receipts, neglects or defaults of any bankers or other persons with whom any monies, investments or effects belonging to the scheme shall or may be lodged or deposited for safe custody, or for the insufficiency or deficiency of any security or investment upon which any monies of the scheme shall or may be placed out or invested, or for any loss, misfortune or damage which the scheme or any beneficiary or other person claiming under the scheme shall or may sustain, except as a result of a willful or reckless act or omission by the protected person known by him to be a breach of trust or breach of duty in relation to the scheme, or done or omitted by him recklessly as to whether or not it is such a breach of trust or duty. 4. The Committee of Management may in their discretion, if they consider such action in the interests of the scheme, determine in relation to any person who is engaged to perform any functions or services for the purposes of the scheme and is not otherwise protected by this clause, that such person shall, to such extent and on such terms as the Committee of Management may think fit, be afforded the benefit of indemnity and exoneration under this clause. 39. The trustee shall have power to enter into such arrangements with the Secretary of State as the Secretary of State is authorized to enter into in accordance with paragraph 2(9) of Schedule 5 to the 1994 Act. 2. The terms of any arrangements made with the Secretary of State pursuant to this clause may only be varied by the trustee on a resolution supported by not less than 7 members of the Committee of Management. 40.1. This clause shall apply with effect from the guarantee date and override any other provisions of the scheme or rules which are inconsistent with it. 2. The words and expressions used in this clause shall have the same meanings as in the Pensions Act. 3. The scheme shall continue for such period as is allowed by law, or until such earlier date as the trustee and the guarantor shall determine, provided that any resolution of the Committee of Management in this respect shall not be valid unless supported by at least 7 members thereof. The date on which the scheme determines by operation of law, or the effective date of the determination referred to above, shall be referred to as the termination date. Subject as hereinafter provided upon the discontinuance of the scheme, which for the avoidance of doubt shall not be caused with effect from the closure date by the closure of the scheme or by the discontinuance of contributions to the scheme, the pension fund shall be dealt with for the benefit of those members and dependents entitled to benefits under the scheme by realization of the pension fund at such time or times as the Committee of Management trustee shall think fit in the light of prevailing investment conditions and application of the net proceeds thereof, in accordance with the following paragraphs of this clause. The trustee shall cause the actuary to carry out a valuation of the pension fund as at the termination date, using an actuarial method and assumptions selected by him after consultation with the trustee and the guarantor, to assess, inter alia, whether at the termination date the assets of the guaranteed fund are likely to be sufficient to secure the guaranteed liabilities as defined in paragraph 4(d) of this clause. For the purposes of this clause, on the discontinuance of the scheme the investment reserve shall not form part of the pension fund. Notwithstanding the foregoing provisions, the Committee of Management trustee shall have power on giving notice to each of the members to transfer, with the consent of the members, the pension fund, guaranteed fund and the bonus augmentation fund, or the appropriate part of parts thereof, in such amounts and on such terms as the actuary may certify as equitable, having regard to the rights to and expectations of benefits of those members for whom provision is made in this way, to one or more new or existing retirement benefits schemes approved by the Commissioners of Inland Revenue. For the avoidance of doubt, the powers of the trustee on the discontinuance of the scheme shall include the power to make use of, vary or novate any arrangements entered into by the trustee with the Secretary of State pursuant to Clause 39, or to enter into any additional or supplemental arrangements. 4. On the discontinuance of the scheme, the Committee of Management trustee shall be entitled to reserve out of the pension fund, guaranteed fund, such amount as they consider may be necessary to meet all proper costs, charges and expenses of and incidental to the realization and forward/or transfer of the pension fund and the winding up of the scheme, and all taxes and duties for which the Committee of Management trustee may be accountable under the scheme, and, subject thereto and subject in all cases to the inland revenue limits, the balance of the pension fund, guaranteed fund shall be applied for the benefit of those members and other persons whose rights to and expectations of benefits have not been secured by a transfer to any other retirement benefit scheme pursuant to paragraph 3 of this clause, and, in the case of a member who was paying normal contributions to the scheme on the termination date of discontinuance if the termination date is before the closure date, on the basis that he ceased to pay normal contributions on that date. A. In securing subject to the provisions of subparagraph D of this paragraph, in equal priority as between themselves, to any other liabilities of the scheme liabilities in respect of I. Subject to the inland revenue limits, such additional pensions and other benefits provided from the AVC scheme pursuant to Rule 5 as the Committee of Management shall determine to be appropriate in relation to any additional voluntary contributions made pursuant to Rule 5. 2. Guaranteed minimum pensions and accrued rights to guaranteed minimum pensions. 3. Any such benefits as are excluded by Section 33(5) of the Pensions Act from earners' guaranteed minimum pensions. 4. Pensions and other benefits in respect of which entitlement to payment has already arisen other than bonus augmentations, crystallized augmentations which are a liability of the Bonus Augmentation Fund and those included in subparagraphs A, I, A2, and A3, and A9 of this paragraph. V. State scheme premiums. 6. Where an earner has attained pensionable age, pensions and other benefits other than bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations which are a liability of the Bonus Augmentation Fund, insofar as they do not fall within the foregoing provisions of this paragraph, A, to which the earner will be entitled on ceasing to be in employment, and B, to which the earner's widow or any dependent of the earner will be entitled on the death of the earner. 7. Where an earner has retired before pensionable age with an immediate pension but at the time of winding up has not attained normal retiring age, pensions and other benefits, other than bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations which are a liability of the Bonus Augmentation Fund, insofar as they do not fall within the foregoing provisions of this paragraph, to which the earner's widow or any dependents of the earner will be entitled on the death of the earner, and 8. Benefits attributable to any period of service before the 6th of April, 1978, and 9. Benefits which are guaranteed crystallized augmentations as at the day preceding the termination date. Provided that if the assets of the scheme are not sufficient to meet in full the liabilities of the scheme as aforesaid, such assets shall be applied first to meet the liabilities specified in subparagraph A, I, of this paragraph, second to meet the liabilities specified in subparagraphs A, 2, to A, 4, of this paragraph and shall be applied to meet the liabilities specified in subparagraphs A, V, to A, 7, of this paragraph before being applied to meet the liabilities specified in subparagraph A, 8, of this paragraph. B. Subject to subparagraphs A, and D, of this paragraph, in securing, in equal priority as between themselves, liabilities in respect of I. Entitlement to pensions and other benefits, other than bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations which are a liability of the Bonus Augmentation Fund, of those members, not being members referred to in subparagraph B, 2, of this paragraph, who had ceased to pay normal contributions on or before the termination date of discontinuance and who had not attained at that date pensionable age. 2. Entitlement to a refund of contributions pursuant to paragraph 5 of Rule 15 for those members who were paying normal contributions at the date of discontinuance immediately before the closure date and, on the termination date of discontinuance, had less than 2 years of qualifying service, and 3. Entitlement to pensions and other benefits, other than bonus augmentations or crystallized augmentations which are a liability of the Bonus Augmentation Fund, of dependents whose benefits are expectant or contingent on the death of any such member as is referred to in subparagraph B, I, of this paragraph. C. Subject thereto in increasing annually after the termination date the amount of each of the annuities, whether payable or prospectively payable, pursuant to subparagraphs A, 4, A, 6, A, 7, and subparagraphs B, I, and B, 3, of paragraph 4. By indexation in line with the increase in the index of retail prices, calculated by applying, to the extent possible, the provisions of Rule 26. D. If the actuary certifies that the application of the guaranteed fund to the liabilities referred to in subparagraphs A, B, and C, above, the guaranteed liabilities, is insufficient to meet the guaranteed liabilities, there shall be transferred to the guaranteed fund from the investment reserve assets to eliminate the deficiency, and if the investment reserve does not eliminate the deficiency, there shall be transferred from the guarantor's fund and the bonus augmentation fund, assets in equal measure until the guaranteed fund is sufficient to meet the guaranteed liabilities or the bonus augmentation fund is exhausted, whichever first occurs. If pursuant to this paragraph an amount is transferable from the guarantor's fund to the guaranteed fund, the actuary shall certify to the guarantor and the committee of management the amount which should be transferred to the guarantor's fund to ensure the guarantor's fund equals the bonus augmentation fund. E. After any transfers to the guaranteed fund from the bonus augmentation fund under D above have been completed, the actuary shall determine and compare the value of the assets of the bonus augmentation fund with the value of the liabilities of the bonus augmentation fund, but with such liabilities which are in the form of bonus augmentations recalculated as crystallized augmentations in the manner provided in Clause 18b, 5.2, and if the value of the assets of the bonus augmentation fund exceeds the value of the crystallized augmentations, the Committee of Management may apply such excess in the same manner as is provided in Clause 18b, 5.3. F. If the value of the assets of the bonus augmentation fund is less than the value of the liabilities in respect of crystallized augmentations, the actuary shall certify to the guarantor and the Committee of Management the amount of such deficiency in the bonus augmentation fund. G. If following the transfers of assets to the guaranteed fund from the guarantor's fund and the bonus augmentation fund in accordance with subparagraph D above, the assets of the guaranteed fund are insufficient to secure the guaranteed liabilities, the actuary shall certify such deficiency to the guarantor and the Committee of Management. H. If following the application of the guaranteed fund, the guaranteed liabilities are fully secured and a balance of assets remains in the guaranteed fund, and if there shall have been a transfer under Clause 18b, 4b, from the investment reserve to the guaranteed fund made in any previous actuarial review of the pension fund which in the opinion of the actuary has not been fully credited, the present value of such uncredited amount, as determined by the actuary, shall be transferred to the investment reserve from the guaranteed fund. The balance of the guaranteed fund, if any, following such transfer to the investment reserve, or the whole of the balance if there shall have been no such transfer, shall be divided by the actuary into 2 equal shares on the basis that one share shall be transferred to the bonus augmentation fund and the other share shall be transferred to the guarantor's fund, and thereupon the bonus augmentation fund shall be applied in accordance with paragraphs 5 and 6 of this clause. 5a. The amount allocated, after consultation with the actuary, to or in respect of each member and dependent pursuant to paragraph 4, shall be applied, in so far as is practicable, either in the payment of state scheme premiums or in the purchase of a non-assignable and, save as herein otherwise provided, non-commutable annuity from such recognized insurance company as the Committee of Management in each case may determine. B. In the case of existing pensioners and members who have reached pensionable age but remain in eligible employment, such annuity shall be an immediate annuity, and in the case of prospective pensioners such annuity shall be a deferred annuity commencing not earlier than pensionable age. C. Any such annuity shall be commutable so as to provide a cash lump sum on such terms as may be approved by the Commissioners of the Inland Revenue. D. The obligation to provide annuities to secure children's benefits pursuant to Rule 20 shall be limited to children born prior to the date of discontinuance termination date or within 12 months of such date. Provided that if no recognized insurance company, either alone or in conjunction with any other recognized insurance company, is willing to offer terms for annuities which correspond to the terms on which benefits which are guaranteed crystallized augmentations are paid or payable, or if the terms on which such benefits can be secured are not such that the Committee of Management could reasonably accept, then the Committee of Management shall have a power at its discretion and with the consent of the guarantor to vary the terms or the amount of the guaranteed crystallized augmentations, but not so as in the opinion of the Committee of Management, acting on the advice of the actuary, would prejudice the value of such benefits to any material extent. 6. If, after application of the pension fund guaranteed fund pursuant to paragraph 4h of this clause, there shall remain any surplus thereof, a balance in the bonus augmentation fund over what is needed to secure the bonus augmentations and crystallized augmentations, the Committee of Management shall secure crystallized augmentations for members in receipt of guaranteed crystallized augmentations in such form and of such amount as, to the extent the application of funds will permit, reproduces identically any guaranteed crystallized augmentations being received by such members at that time, and thereupon the liability of the crystallized augmentation fund in respect of such guaranteed crystallized augmentations to the extent that they are so reproduced shall be extinguished. The Committee of Management shall then, in so far as is practicable and subject in all cases to the inland revenue limits, apply such surplus remaining balance, if any, in the bonus augmentation fund, so far as they have not done so, in purchasing policies of term assurance and in making provision for increases in the benefits required to be secured as aforesaid, other than in respect of additional voluntary contributions made under Rule 5 and benefits purchased therefrom, in the following sequence of priorities. A. In purchasing policies of term assurance providing for the payment of the capital sums on death in the circumstances specified in paragraph 7 of Rule 16. B. In increasing annually after the date of discontinuance of the scheme termination date the amount of each of the annuities, whether payable or prospectively payable, pursuant to subparagraph A, 4, A, 6, A, 7, A, 8, A, 9, of this rule and subparagraphs B, I, and B, 3, of paragraph 4, by indexation in line with the increase in the index of retail prices, calculated by applying, to the extent possible, the provisions of Rule 26 but limited in any event to 5%, or Rule 26b as appropriate. C. In increasing annually after the date of discontinuance of the scheme the amount of certain of the annuities specified in subparagraph B of this paragraph by indexation in line with the increase in the index of retail prices calculated by applying, to the extent possible, the provisions of Rule 26 to those pensions specified in subparagraphs A and C of paragraph 2 of Rule 26, insofar as it may, in any year, exceed 5%. D. In increasing annually after the date of discontinuance of the scheme termination date the annuities secured for members who are paying contributions at the time of discontinuance termination date and for whom no transfer is made pursuant to paragraph 3 of this rule clause by indexation in line with the increase in the index of retail prices calculated by applying, to the extent possible, the provisions of Rule 26 insofar as it may, in any year, exceed 5% to the extent that this has not already been provided pursuant to subparagraph B of this paragraph of this rule clause, and E. In making such other increases, whether initially or by annual indexation as aforesaid or by both such means, in all or any of the annuities, whether payable or prospectively payable, required to be secured pursuant to paragraphs 4 and 5 of this clause, and the term assurance is required to be purchased pursuant to subparagraph A of this paragraph, as the Committee of Management, after consultation with the actuary, may consider fair as between the respective persons for whom the same are to be secured, and f. Subject to the approval of the Board of Inland Revenue, in the payment to the employers, after deduction of any tax due thereon, of the balance, if any, of the pension fund which may remain in such proportions as the Committee of Management, acting with the advice of the actuary, shall consider to be just and equitable, and in such event the employers may retain the whole or any part of the balance of the pension fund so paid to them, provided that if no recognized insurance company, either alone or in conjunction with any other recognized insurance company, is willing to offer terms for annuities which increase in accordance with the provisions of subparagraphs B or D of this paragraph, which the Committee of Management, after consultation with the actuary, in their discretion are willing to accept, then the Committee of Management shall have a discretion, with the consent of the guarantor, to vary the provisions of subparagraphs B and D of this paragraph upon such terms and subject to such conditions as may be agreed between the Committee of Management, after consultation with the actuary, and the recognized insurance company. B. If no recognized insurance company, either alone or in conjunction with any other recognized insurance company, is willing to offer terms for annuities which correspond to the terms on which benefits which are crystallized augmentations are paid or payable, or if the terms on which such benefits can be secured are not such that the Committee of Management could reasonably accept, then the Committee of Management shall have a power at its discretion to vary, with the consent of the guarantor, the terms or the amount of the crystallized augmentations, but not so as in the opinion of the Committee of Management, acting on the advice of the actuary, would prejudice the value of such benefits to any material extent. 7. Where an application of a balance of the guaranteed fund is made pursuant to paragraph 4h of this clause, and a payment out of that balance into the bonus augmentation fund is applied under paragraph 6 of this clause to secure crystallized augmentations which replace existing guaranteed crystallized augmentations, liabilities within the guaranteed fund in respect of those guaranteed crystallized augmentations shall be extinguished, and the Committee of Management shall direct the actuary to recalculate the guaranteed liabilities and determine what fresh balance arises in the guaranteed fund, which will be dealt with under paragraph 4h of this clause, to be divided by the actuary into 2 equal shares, and 1 share being transferred to the bonus augmentation fund to be applied in accordance with paragraphs 5 and 6 of this clause. If that application results in a further reduction in the liabilities of the guaranteed fund, the actuary shall again recalculate the guaranteed liabilities and shall continue the process described in this paragraph 7, until the surplus is exhausted or no further guaranteed crystallized augmentations remain, whichever first occurs. 8. Subject to the foregoing provisions of this clause and subject to the approval of the Commissioners of Inland Revenue, the balance, if any, of the bonus augmentation fund which may remain shall, after deduction of any tax due thereon, be paid to the employers in such proportions as the trustee, acting with the advice of the actuary, shall consider to be just and equitable, and in such event the employers may retain the whole or any part of the balance so paid to them. The balance of the guarantor's fund and the investment reserve shall be paid, after deduction of any tax due thereon, to the guarantor.